Now, the chances of Sweden and Finland joining NATO, they're looking increasingly slim. This after Turkey reported cancelling a meeting with both countries indefinitely. President Erdogan ruled out supporting Sweden's bid after the far-right activist burned an effigy, burned a copy of the Quran in Stockholm. Bloomberg Simone Foxman is tracking this story. I mean, we touched on this a couple of weeks ago, but this has obviously escalated quite considerably. Where do we go from here?
Yeah, we're at a real low point in these discussions because essentially President Erdogan ruling out backing Sweden, and so there doesn't necessarily seem to be a clear path forward. One thing we did hear for the very first time yesterday was some openness on the Finnish part. Remember, Sweden and Finland's bids to join NATO are being considered jointly. Some openness on Finland's part to perhaps go it alone if Turkey simply won't offer their approval for Sweden. So the foreign minister of Finland saying yesterday that while he still sees this joint path as possible, somewhere in the back of our mind, we are considering our options. That's not something that NATO would want. That's not something that both of those countries would want. But that's something we could see happen because Turkey's problems are mostly with Sweden. They're not necessarily with Finland. Swedish as well as American officials taking great pains to insist that while that tripartite talk between the three countries was postponed, the talks aren't canceled forever. They want to get back to the negotiating table. The question is, how does the U.S. exert some pressure potentially on fighter jets, on something else? How exactly we get back there right now, we just kind of don't know.
And then to energy ahead of the next OPEC Plus meeting scheduled for February. I mean, we understand that there is a growing consensus, right, about maintaining the status quo.
Yeah, I think the Secretary General of OPEC, expressing his cautious optimism about the outlook of the world, seemed to suggest to Mideast last week, that potentially people are kind of trying to wait and see, and that is the reporting we're getting from our sources across the world. Team effort here. Hearing that delegates really see the status quo in terms of production targets continuing because they just have a lot of question marks about things, including the China's economic recovery from COVID, also the exact impact of Russia sanctions. Yes, we've seen sanctions come in on oil, but we haven't seen them come into full play on refined products, and we won't do so until the beginning of next month. Goldman Sachs also offering some longer-term outside, is saying that they don't believe that we'll actually see a reversal into the kind of current cuts that we've seen to production until the second half of the year, but that's the time when the economy is going to start picking up and when we'll see more oil coming out of OPEC Plus.
Yeah, let's see what the JMMC actually decide. That's what we've got at the end of the month. Well, Saudi Arabia's sovereign wealth fund, they've been associated with several Californian court cases recently, and they may get dragged into another one. What is it? Who is it this time?
Well, this one, yes, there's Tesla going on in the courtroom, in a California courtroom right now, but this one is about PGA Tour versus Live Golf, the Saudi-backed golf league. And a PGA Tour filing a motion yesterday asking that Yasser Al-Rumayyan, the governor of the PIF, as well as the PIF itself, be defendants in this current case. They argue, the PGA Tour argues, that Live Golf is competing unfairly when it was dangling these multi-million-dollar contracts in front of players to try and get them to renege on their contracts with the PGA Tour. And the reason that these folks, the Saudi PIF folks, should be involved directly, they say, is because they were actually involved in the deals and they expressly signed off on some of these new contracts. Saudi PIF has not wanted to get involved in these court cases. They don't want to do disclosure, but actually as defendants of the case, they would have to step up. They would have to provide documents. They would not be covered by sovereign immunity. So a lot of court momentum, various issues bringing Saudi PIF, Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund, and potentially revealing some things, internal discussions that probably the Sovereign Wealth Fund does not want right now.